So it's certainly not sufficient to, when we talk about searching for chametz, to go to Google and just place just write chametz in the search bar. That does not fulfill the requirement of searching for chametz. On the other hand, it's not required to start opening up your Yom Kippur machzer to search for crumbs in your Yom Kippur machzer. So we want to try to find somewhere in between. In other words, you have to do a little bit more than just putting chametz in the search bar, and less than checking your Yom Kippur machzer, because there's not going to be any chametz in your Yom Kippur machzer for obvious reasons. So let's jump right into it. Generally speaking, with Pesach, there's a war that we have against chametz. Right? We try to make sure to eliminate chametz, and not see it, to not eat it. And of course, a central mitzvah of the Seder night, aside from relating the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, and you have your family and your friends, and it's a beautiful evening, and it's a Beit Medrash learning multi-sensory experience. So a big mitzvah that we have on Pesach night is eating matzah, right? And the matzah represents the food of slavery, which became the food of redemption. It represents the quickness, right? The speed, right? The speed of the redemption. And so there's a big mitzvah on Pesach night, over the course of Pesach, to eat matzah, and certainly the mitzvah, the obligation to eat matzah, is at the Seder. And then related to that is this war against chametz, right? Which we want to try to avoid as much as possible, the chametz. So just to crunch it down, and as kind of an introduction, there are really two basic prohibitions. There's two basic prohibitions when it comes to Pesach. The first is that you're not allowed to eat chametz. And this is based on the pasuk. There's a few psukim, kikol ochel chametz v'nichrata hanefesh, that a person who eats chametz is considered deserving of a serious punishment of karet, which is kind of like cut off from the Jewish people. The second basic prohibition to keep in mind with regards to preparing for Pesach, with regards to Pesach, is described by the rabbis as bal yira'eh and bal yimatzeh. So these are actually two different verses. One pasuk says, "Lo yira'eh lecha sa'or," that you should not see in your possession any leavened products. And another pasuk is Shivat Yamim Sa'or Lo Yimatzeh, right? It should not be found in your possession. So this is kind of commonly known by the rabbis in rabbinic parlance as Bal Yira Bal Yimatzeh. Bal Yira Bal Yimatzeh. So while the positive commandments of Pesach night, is eating matzah and relating the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, there's also a positive mitzvah of eliminating chametz in advance of Pesach. It's called tashbisu. Okay, eliminating chametz, so that's relevant for this year. But in addition to that, you can't eat chametz, and also chametz, you're not allowed to own chametz. There's really no prohibition in seeing chametz. Chametz, when I say chametz, it includes bread and cookies and pasta and Twix bars, right? And anything that has from the 5 grains that wasn't watched, you could assume is chametz and is prohibited to eat, and it's prohibited to own over the course of Pesach. There's really no prohibition to see chametz. If somebody were to walk into your house on Pesach with a sandwich, it's not the greatest thing, and it's nothing to write home about. But if it's not owned by you and it's owned by a worker, you're not going to be in violation of anything. Of course, it's not, you don't want chametz coming through your house, but really the prohibition is eating or benefiting. You can't benefit and you can't own chametz. That's the idea of bal yira bal yimatzeh. What is it about chametz that led the Torah to make such a serious prohibition regarding it? So there are a lot of, kind of like philosophical ideas that relate to the story of Pesach, but just on a halachic sense, the Ran gives 2 explanations. He says that with non-kosher foods, it's easy to avoid because it's always prohibited over the course of the year. Chametz, right, is permitted during the course of the year, and so that's why the Torah needs to make a more stringent prohibition to ensure compliance, to make sure that we avoid chametz over the course of the 8 days. And the second reason why there's a prohibition against owning it is because, right, chametz is treated as a serious prohibition of karet, as we said, And so maybe that's why the Torah went out of its way to say you can't, it's not just wrong to eat it, but it's also wrong to own the chametz. So now if we jump into, with that kind of like summary of introduction, so why is it necessary to clean your home and your kitchen for Pesach? Why is it necessary? So the first reason is because you can't own chametz based on the prohibitions of Bal Yirah, Bal Yimatzeh. And secondly, the reason why you have to clean and prepare your home and kitchen is because if you have chametz lying around, right, so then you might come and eat it and be in violation of the prohibition that way. So how do you prepare your home and kitchen? So here's the good news. Okay, you don't have to rip out the carpeting. You don't have to replace the floor tiles. You don't need to repaint. You don't need to repaint the shul or the different homes or the different rooms in your house. Okay, you don't need to repaint. You don't need to replace the floor tiles, and you don't need to rip out the carpet. There's a number of different mechanisms that the Torah permits, that the rabbis encouraged to help you have a kosher Pesach, to help you prepare your home and kitchen for Pesach. All right, so a few different mechanisms in our war against chametz. So the first is the traditional method of just cleaning your home. You are supposed to, get rid of chametz to the degree that you can. You're supposed to clear out your home from any, bread, pasta, cookies, and things of this nature. And this leads to, we do bedikat chametz, right? So the night prior to Pesach, we do bedikat chametz. We search around our home for the chametz. The reason why we do that at night is because, number one, candlelight is most effective. And number two, the Gemara says, because people tend to be home, right? There's a greater chance that people will be home and everyone will be involved in this search for chametz, in the bedikat chametz. In addition to the candle, so you're allowed to, and I would encourage using a flashlight to help with the search of the house. It shouldn't just be like a perfunctory, going through the motions search of the house, but it should be a genuine, sincere, with a sense of purpose, going around the house, taking some time to make sure that that your different rooms are clear of any chametz. You say a bracha prior to doing the bedika, prior to doing the examination, and the bracha is based on the end goal. So the blessing is al biur chametz, right? Because you put out a number of pieces of bread. One person should remember exactly where he or she placed the bread. The custom is, based on Kabbalistic reasons, to put out 10 pieces of bread. And you want to make sure to find all 10 pieces that you put out. And if you find another thing or two during the course of your search, that means you did a good, real search to make sure that everything is clear. After you do the bedika on Thursday night, so then you do what's called nullification. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes. If you're leaving your home, let's say you're going away for Pesach, okay, so you have the great privilege to go to a Pesach program in Mexico or wherever it might be, Arizona or Florida, or wherever it might be, or you're just going away to family for Pesach. So then, before you leave your home, the night before, you are supposed to do bedika. However, if it's not Thursday night, so if it's Wednesday night or Tuesday night or Monday night, in other words, if it's a few days before, you do the bedika, but you do it without a blessing. You don't do a blessing. And then when you get to your place where you're going to, so then if you're with family or with other people, whatever it is, then you should do a bedika at the place where you go to. You're coming to a hotel room, so presumably it's clean when you get there, but it's a good idea to still, go around quickly and do a bedika in the place where you're going to. Okay, so the first thing is bedika and biur. So what do you need to do to prepare your home so that you could eventually do the bedika and that you could eventually, of course, have a home or an apartment, whatever it is, that's clear of the chametz. So here are just a couple of suggestions, okay, or a couple, things that you need to do in my mind. That the floor should be swept and carpet should be vacuumed, I take it you do that from time to time anyway, so that's something that you need to do. The desk drawers should be quickly checked. Jackets and coats that are worn somewhat regularly, so check the pockets quickly. Backpacks and purses. Okay, you want to just quickly check through the backpack and purses, when you went to the beach and you took the granola bars and it's been sitting there for a couple of months, so you want to clear the granola bars out of the backpack. I would say also, like, quickly on the couch cushions, just, a quick check. Now, those are the main places to search for. The law is that anywhere that chametz is generally brought, that anywhere that chametz could be brought or where people eat food, so then that's where you should check. If it's a place where chametz is never brought, like a bathroom or your garage, so then there is no need to check there. There's really no need to even clean there because nobody goes there with chametz. Now, if you have children around, whether children or grandchildren, so then you could kind of assume that chametz might be anywhere, and so you should go through your house to make sure to check all the different places in your home. Now, if you're blessed to have, in terms of like sweeping and vacuuming and cleaning out the desk drawers, so if you're blessed to have a housekeeper who could help you with that, so that's wonderful. If you're blessed to have a family member who could do some of these chores, so then certainly you don't need me to tell you, take advantage of that. So in terms of how hard it is to get your home and kitchen ready for Pesach, if you could have help, either with paid help or family members who help, or if it's your teenager who wants to help but requires you to pay him, to help. But so then, that makes it a lot easier if somebody's gonna, sweep, and sweeping and vacuuming, these are things hopefully you generally do. So don't go overboard. Don't go overboard. You don't have to rip up the carpet. And I'll tell you in a moment what you don't need to do. You sweep, you vacuum, check the desk drawers, the pockets, the backpacks, and the purses. And then a quick check of the couch cushions. You don't need to unscrew, the cushion and take it out and clean it out. I don't think that is necessary. The second mechanism that the rabbis tell us to do, and we should take advantage of, that I just made reference to earlier, just quickly, is called bittul. Bittul means to nullify any chametz in your possession. The custom is we do this at the conclusion of the bedika on Thursday night, next Thursday night this year, right? Thursday night is the night before Pesach this year, next Thursday night in 8 days. So the custom is to do the nullification after the bedika, and then you or somebody on your behalf does the nullification again Friday morning at the time of the burning of the chametz, where you're supposed to burn some chametz, the chametz that you found during the bedika, and any last portions of chametz. So you do the bittul at that time as well. Now, with regards to crumbs around your house, so this is where bittul plays a role, that really nullification of the chametz is all you need to do for the crumbs. If it's in the main area, as I said, you sweep up the main area. There shouldn't be crumbs around the main area. Quick check of the couch cushions in the living room if you sometimes snack or have dessert on the couches, or if some people do that. But other than that, this is very, very important, which is that you don't need to be nervous or anxious or stressed out over crumbs that are maybe inaccessible. Okay, you don't need to pull out the refrigerator to check for crumbs. I mean, if you want to, if it makes you feel better, if you want to use this as your once-a-year opportunity, then go ahead, you have my blessings. But you do not need to pull out the refrigerator. You do not need to find every single crumb. This is very, very important. It's because I just gave you before 5 or 6 things, right, that you need to do. Otherwise, the Torah was not given to angels. The Torah was given to human beings. We give it our best shot. We care, each of you. And it's amazing to see how everyone, even people who are not connected during the year, all of you are, but people who are not connected to tradition during the year, right? Everyone gets excited about observing Pesach, and everyone's asking all different kinds of questions, which is beautiful. But the Torah wasn't given to angels. It was given to Bnei Israel, human beings. And so we do our best shot to clean out the home and to check it. But crumbs, which are inaccessible, should not bother you, should not worry you, because that, my friends, is the purpose of bittul. We do bittul after the bedika, and we do bittul in the morning as well. Bittul is a verbal declaration that you make, saying that any chametz that you know about, that you don't know about, ultimately, all of that should be nullified. According to Rashi, according to the Torah commentary Rashi, he says that when you do bittul, you're actually in fulfillment of the Torah mitzvah of tashbitu we made reference to earlier. Right, in terms of positive commandments for Pesach, it's eating matzah, it's telling the story on the night of Pesach, and it's also tashbitu. It's really eliminating the chametz from your possession before Pesach, and that's by burning the chametz. But Rashi says even also by nullifying the chametz, you're actually also in fulfillment of the mitzvah of tashbitu, of eliminating. Tashbitu means to eliminate the chametz. Tosfot disagrees. Tosfot says that no, that when you nullify the chametz, you're making it ownerless. So it's kind of like a workaround. And according to Tosfot, you should certainly go out of your way, and it's the accepted practice, of course, to go out of your way to burn some chametz on Friday morning, or to have an agent or somebody who's doing it for you. That's the the destruction of the chametz and kind of like the closure on clearing out your house from chametz. We actually incorporate Rashi and Tosfot in our declaration for nullification, where we say Kol chamir v'chamia. That's the declaration. Kol chamir v'chamia, and we end it by saying lahave hefker ki afra diara. It should be ownerless, like dust of the earth. So lahave hefker, ownerless, is in accordance with the position of Tosfot, that by nullifying it, we're saying it's not mine, and it should be like dirt, like dust. That seems to be in accordance with Rashi, who says that you're actually kind of like mentally, cognitively destroying the chametz. The third mechanism, all right, the first is a traditional cleaning of the house, which you need to do. Don't go overboard. Get some help doing it. It shouldn't take long, especially if you have someone who's helping you out with it. That shouldn't take long. The second mechanism is bittul, which is a verbal declaration, and that should put your mind at ease. Right? Because you cleared the house, you swept like you usually do. You don't go crazy. You don't need to do spring cleaning. I don't think you need to check every single book. You don't need to check every single book in your house. And now you have the third mechanism, which is very important, which is called mechirat chametz, selling of the chametz. So this developed, even the Talmud, there's from the Talmudic times, it speaks about the idea of selling chametz to a non-Jew, certainly in extenuating circumstances, already a few hundred years ago, especially when there were big whiskey and beer sellers. So they had these big warehouses of beer and whiskey, which is chametz. So that's when it kind of developed already a couple hundred years ago for Jews in advance of Pesach to do mechirat chametz. There are some who do not sell what's called chametz gomer. In other words, they try to clear out the house. This is what my wife and I try to do. Okay, we're not tzaddikim, but this is what we try to do. We try not to sell any regular chametz. We try to just clear out the house. So we kind of think in advance already. In other words, a few weeks before Pesach, we don't buy 20 boxes of pasta. Kind of time it. And so we try not to sell, regular chametz. So there's bread, pasta, cookies, all that stuff. We don't have that in our house at all. But something that might have an ingredient of chametz, and just a little bit of chametz in it, or let's say you're not sure whether it's chametz or not, or let's say whiskey. Whiskey is kind of, it's not the actual, certainly it's chametz, but you might say that that's not called chametz gamor. So there are those who are stringent not to take advantage of the mechanism of mechirat chametz by regular chametz. Okay, there are those. The widespread custom in Israel is that we rely on the sale of chametz for all chametz. Okay, so there are those who are stringent, but the widespread custom is that you could rely on this device of selling your chametz, And so, you're staying home for Pesach. It doesn't mean, okay, you're just going to sell all the chametz in your house. And so number one, because that seems like it's going against the spirit of the law. And number two, if you have chametz lying around, obviously that's not good because somebody might come and eat the chametz. So what it means is that you could set certain areas, right, certain cabinets, which have chametz in it, and that's fine. And what you do is you appoint the rabbi. Many of you have already done it through me, or you will do it through me, or you find somebody else, and you appoint the rabbi as your agent to sell the chametz completely to a non-Jew. Okay, and it's a complete sale to the non-Jew, so it's no longer in your possession. There's a famous legend about Rav Chaim Soloveitchik. It's told as a true story that the non-Jew came to Rav Chaim Soloveitchik on Pesach, right? Rav Chaim Soloveitchik sold all the community members chametz to this particular Nachri non-Jew, and the non-Jew came to Rav Chaim Soloveitchik on Yom Tov and said, I want my chametz. And Rav Chaim Soloveitchik was so happy that the non-Jew was coming to him asking for his chametz because he wanted to convey the message that this is a real sale. It's not just a fictitious thing. It's a real sale where with intention, with certainty, we're giving away. It's a legal transfer of ownership of the chametz to the non-Jew. So he was so excited, right, that it was a way to maybe share with the community that really this is the real deal. And then, of course, when you do this, of course, you tape up the cabinet, or let's say you put it in, it's in the garage and you cover it, and that's called mechirat. That's called mechirat chametz. So with these different mechanisms, this is really the way you could have a successful battle in defeating chametz, and also in kind of hopefully streamlining the process. Okay. You have the bedika biur, which is the traditional cleaning and destroying of chametz. You have the bittul, which will put your mind at ease because that's really totally nullifying the crumbs, and it's nullifying everything. And that really works in its own right. We're not going to just rely on the nullification of chametz. Why? Because if the chametz is around, then you might come and eat it. And also to just rely on a verbal declaration, that's a lot of pressure because you have to really be sincere when you're nullifying the chametz. And of course you are, but that's why we're not going to just rely on nullifying the chametz. We're not going to just say, okay, I'm just going to make a verbal declaration, everything is nullified. No, we're going to stay still. Clean the house as I described. Do the bedika and the burning of the chametz, as we discussed. Do that bittul, that'll cover all the areas that maybe you didn't get to, cover all the crumbs that are inaccessible. And then, of course, you do mechirat chametz. If you have, a couple boxes of pasta, you have a bread, or you have, other stuff, and you don't want to throw it out. It's an accepted practice that you can rely on the principle of mechirat chametz. And anyone who appoints me, I'm going to sell any areas that you put in, and any other chametz in your house. You know what? I'm going to be your friend. I'm going to be a nice guy, and I'm going to sell that chametz as well. Sell that chametz as well to the non-Jew, just in case. If you have any questions, you're welcome to put it into the chat box, or if you have any questions here, just to pause for a moment, or I'll keep going, and if you want, you could write it down, and we'll ask at the end. Because now we're moving into from the house into the kitchen. All right, so now we have a game plan, right? We're starting to feel a little bit better about it. Right, you're thinking about maybe asking me to come over to help with some of these things, to sweep the floors. I'm happy to do so. Let me know. But basically, I think we get sometimes carried away, which is a beautiful thing in a certain sense, but then it ends up making it cumbersome and burdensome and difficult, and it ends up taking away from the spirit of the holiday when we get anxious and stressed out and doing more than necessary. Again, you can't eat chametz, and you can't own chametz. And there's this idea of eliminating chametz. And now we have the different methods. Just follow those steps, and you'll be totally fine. Let's move now, with your permission. Let's move now from the kitchen, from the house to the kitchen. Okay. Any food you buy has to be kosher l'Pesach. You don't need the rabbi to tell you that, right? So anything you buy needs to be kosher LePesach. You go to, to the Jewish grocery stores, and you make sure that it has an OUP, OU kosher for Pesach. It goes without saying that's the first thing. Number two is with regards to pots, pans, silverware, dishes, etc. Great story that I've told in the past about Rabbi Heyer and some other rabbis who had a royal dinner with the British, with the royals from England in Vancouver. And long story short is that basically, I think it was Rabbi Heyer who had these dishes, and he was walking around with his kosher dishes. And afterward, there was another Jew there who was like embarrassed by it, and told the rabbi and said, you're embarrassing us by walking around with your kosher dishes, because he had asked in advance, I keep kosher and I need kosher dishes, and they had set it up for him. But then, like a couple times during the meal, apparently it was that their custom to change places. So he was carrying his dishes and his silverware with him. And afterwards, Prince Charles, this is a true story, Prince Charles asked Rabbi Heyer and said, why are you walking around with your dishes? He said, because I keep kosher. And the prince said, wow, in his British accent, as opposed to my New York broken accent. He said, wow, I never knew that to keep kosher, you have to it's not just kosher food, but even kosher dishes. I never knew that. And they were having a conversation. And then the other Jew who criticized Rabbi Heyer earlier saw that the Prince Charles was having a conversation with the rabbi, and he said to Prince Charles, I'm Jewish also. So Prince Charles responded immediately. He said, so where were your dishes? All right, so we should be proud of the fact that we have to keep kosher and have kosher dishes, kosher for Pesach dishes. The basic premise here is that it's not just, right, in other words, you have to eat kosher food, and you can't eat non-kosher food. And also, if it's a taste in the walls of the pot or in your silverware, the taste is tantamount to the food. It's called tamo ke'ikar, right? Tam ke'ikar, that the taste is like the food. Technically speaking, it's only for the first 24 hours that it's a positive taste. After 24 hours, we assume the taste has already spoiled, and it's not a positive taste. But in any case, when you have pots, pans, silverware, dishes, they need to be kosher for Pesach. If you have designated kosher for Pesach silverware, dishes, pots, and pans, then you're good to go. If you don't, so then you need to kosher the silverware, or you want to kosher the kosot, right? The cups that you use for wine and grape juice, because those are washed with chametz items. So you want to kosher the different things. So how do you prepare your kitchen? For number one, the foods need to be kosher Pesach, and then how do you deal with the pots and pans and silverware, the appliances, and the countertops and the other parts of the kitchen? So here, the principle to be aware of, the most important principle. Let's review some of the basic laws of koshering. One of the basic principles of koshering is kabolo kach polto. Kabolo, as the way the food is absorbed, kach polto. That's the way you extract the taste. And let me give you three different basic forms of koshering. One of them it's called libun, which is through fire. So if a pan or a grill is used for food without the medium of water, it's a grill, so then this item requires koshering through fire. That's called libun. And libun means to bring the item to an intense red heat. And this is, of course, like a more difficult form of koshering. The second kind of koshering, which is more, regularly done, is called hagala. If a pot or pan is used for food with the medium of water, or silverware, which is used at the table, right? So it's not on the fire, it's silverware, or it's a tray that's used. So then it requires what's called hagala, and that's koshering with boiling water, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a moment. And then the third form of koshering is if you have a countertop or a sink that's poured upon, or something might fall on it or is poured upon. So then the way to remove the chametz taste is by pouring water over it, by pouring boiling water over it. And that's called irui rotchin, pouring of boiling water. Some poskim allow steaming. If it's a very, strong steamer and you steam the counter, that might work as well. Maybe we'll come back to that. There's a couple other forms of koshering. Let's say if we talk about, glasses. If any glass is used for hot, so then the custom is not to kosher, that it's not kosherable for Pesach. If the glasses were used for cold during the year, let's say it's just like drinking glasses, still I would recommend getting new glasses, getting different, new glasses for Pesach. But if you want to kosher a glass that we just use for cold, so then what you do is you do 24 hours of water. You put water in it, let it sit for 24 hours. Then you empty it out. You put water in it again, 24 hours, and you put water in it again for 24 hours. But I wouldn't. That's a more, it's a little more esoteric form of koshering. The three forms of koshering are libun with fire, and that's if you have where it's cooking or grilling without the medium of water. The second kind of koshering is called hagala, okay, which is where when you have food that's prepared with the medium of water, or silverware, which is used, not over the fire. And the third form of koshering is irui rotchin, which is pouring boiling water or steaming the countertop. So let's talk about a little bit more about these three different forms of koshering. So there's only certain materials that can be. Again, the common principle is kabolo, kaf polto, right? As the suspicious taste of not kosher or chametz was absorbed, that's the way to extract it. Okay, so there's only certain materials that can be koshered. What are the materials? So number one, all metals. All metals can be koshered. Okay, a smooth wood utensil can be koshered. Granite or marble countertops can be koshered. Plastic, there's a lot of discussion about plastic. My view is, based on my learning and based on my Rabbeim, is that a person can kosher. Okay, you can kosher plastic, although some are stringent with regards to plastic, not to kosher it. So metals can be koshered, smooth wood utensils can be koshered, and granite or marble countertops can all be koshered. Plastic, okay, I think one can be lenient to kosher that as well. Glass, we just explained. General custom is if glass was used for hot, so then not to kosher the glass is not kosherable. Porcelain, earthenware, or china. So these are things that should not be koshered. So it's interesting when it comes to china or porcelain, so there's a leniency and a stringency. There's a leniency when it comes to immersion in the mikveh. Let's say when you buy a new utensil that was manufactured by a non-Jew, right? So regularly you buy a regular utensil from Bed, Bath & Beyond, wherever it is. So then if it's a metal utensil, metal or glass actually, so it's supposed to be immersed in a mikveh. That's kind of like, converting the utensil to be able to be used by a Jew. But with regards to porcelain, china, or earthenware, so then you do not need to immerse it in a mikveh. Okay, so that's the leniency by china. As if you buy a set of china, right, or a set of porcelain dishes, you do not need to immerse that in a mikveh. So that's the leniency by china, by earthenware. But the stringency, right, is that if it becomes not kosher, we generally do not kosher it. If it's chametzik, right, so then we don't kosher it for Pesach. The rules of koshering by non-kosher is similar to the rules of koshering for Pesach, generally speaking. Okay, so that's the general, in terms of which things can be koshered, which things cannot be koshered. Things like Duralex, Pyrex, Corel, Corningware. So it's somewhat questionable, and I would say it should not be. These things should not be koshered for Pesach. Okay, one important rule in kashrut is that, as I referenced before, is that the taste is only a problem if it's within the first 24 hours. So one concern when it comes to the, to koshering is, wait a second, if you kosher something in a boiling pot of water, and we're going to get back to that in a moment, right? So the chametz taste is going to go into the water, and then maybe it's going to go back into the silverware, or the pot. So the way to avoid this is that when you kosher something, okay, so it's something that can be kosher. So let's say it's metal, or silverware or aluminum, any form of metal, stainless steel, and right, so it's used with boiling water, or it's not used right over the fire, so you can kosher it in boiling water. So the common custom is to wait 24 hours before koshering it. So the idea is that it should be eno ben yomo. So for koshering, you usually want to wait 24 hours, and then any taste that's drawn out will be like a spoiled taste. And so we're not concerned about that taste going back in to the item. Okay, so now let's talk about the different items and how to kosher it. Okay, an oven. So if you have a self-cleaning oven, so then that's called self-koshering. Just run it through the self-cleaning cycle, and that's considered koshering of the oven. Let's say you have an oven, you're not blessed to have a self-cleaning oven, right? So what do? So what you should do is you make sure not to use the oven for 24 hours. The oven should be cleaned thoroughly. And then what you do is you set the oven to the highest temperature, and you run the oven for 1 hour. And that'll be considered koshering of the oven. Okay, so it's 24 hours, you clean it thoroughly, and you run it on the highest temperature for 1 hour. The reason is because even though you're not using water, but the food is not directly touching the walls of the oven. So it's just an issue of the steam that's caused by the food. And so that's why the custom is, meaning if you can self-clean it, great. You want to use a blowtorch, that's the stringency, but you can also just set the oven to the highest temperature. A microwave. Okay, so clean it well, clean the microwave well. Don't use it for 24 hours. And then what you do is then you put a styrofoam cup of water into the microwave, and you run it for 10 minutes. Then there's a stringency that you could do, which is that to do it a second time, because to cover the spot, to put the cup in a different spot in the microwave. So this way you put the styrofoam cup of water in there for 10 minutes, take it out carefully, and then you put it in a different spot in the microwave, and then you run it again for 10 minutes. In terms of the tray in the microwave, so then you should replace or remove the tray. If you want, if you cover it, well with plastic, with saran wrap, that's another possibility with regards to the tray. Warming drawers. Okay, so warming drawers, I would say best that they should not be koshered for Pesach. Hopefully you can survive the week without your wolf or whatever warming drawer that you're blessed to have. But if it's important to you to have the warming drawer, then I think what you could do is you make sure that it's clean. You put the warming drawer on the highest temperature for 1 hour, and then you double wrap the foods. Double wrap with tin foil, and that should be good. Silver. Let's talk about silverware. Silverware or pots, right? So how do you kosher that? So again, what we say that you do, right? It's super easy. You make sure it's clean. Number 2 is you wait the 24 hours. And then you throw it into a boiling pot of water. The most important rule about koshering is not to use your bare hands to put, to take the silverware out. So make sure to be careful when you put in and take out the utensils. But you boil up a pot of water. It could be any clean pot that wasn't used in 24 hours. Okay, it does not need to be a kosher for Passover pot. You clean the silverware, you wait 24 hours, you throw it into the boiling water. It could be in there for several seconds. And then what you do is you carefully remove, with tongs, whatever it is, you carefully remove the silverware. And then the custom is to rinse it off with cold water. Why do you have to rinse it off with cold water? The idea of that is, again, relating to that issue of, wait a second, so you're extracting the taste, but then don't we have to be worried about the taste going back into the item? So that's why we said you wait 24 hours before koshering. Anyway, there's a huge amount of water that's going to nullify any taste, but as an extra stringency, the last step of the koshering is to rinse it off with cold water. So this way, it kind of washes away any possible suspicious non-kosher or chametz taste on the item. What about the pot itself? So what you need to do with the pot itself is, right, you fill it with water, bring it to a boil. You could even kosher silverware or, kosot or goblets in there. Just be in there for several seconds. And then what you do is you put something in there that causes the water to boil over. If you fill the pot to the very top, and then you boil it, so it'll already start kind of like dripping, boiling over the sides of the pot. And if you just maybe you throw in something, and then it kind of like splashes over the side. But that's something that you might be familiar with in terms of like the hot rock. You don't really need a rock, and it doesn't really need to be that hot. But it's if you put in something that causes the water to boil over the sides, so that's the way that you kosher the pot. Yeah. So one interesting thing, we spoke about China, right? We said that with China, there's a leniency with regards to immersion in a mikveh, that you don't have to immerse it in a mikveh. That's if it's new and clean, right? Just purchased. But the stringency with regards to China is that if it's something that's used all year long, we don't kosher it for Pesach. If it's something that became not kosher at any time, right, it's generally not kosherable. There are some exceptions, but we generally don't kosher it. If you have an expensive set of china as a family heirloom, so you should ask me, and we could talk about if there's any way to make that kosher for usage during the year or on Pesach. But generally speaking, we don't kosher that. Another difference between immersion and koshering, right? So one difference is china, right? So china does not need to be immersed in a mikveh, which is a leniency, and it can't be koshered, which ends up being a stringency. But another difference between immersion and koshering is in terms of, do you need to do the whole object all at once? So with regards to immersion in a mikveh, so then you have to put the whole metal item or glass item into the mikveh at once. Just like a human being who goes to the mikveh, right? You have to go, completely under the mikveh, into the water. But with regards to koshering, it's different. With regards to koshering, you could do it in parts. You could do it in stages. So that's a very important thing to know about koshering. Let's say you have a big utensil, or a long, a long server. So you could kosher, part of it, and then kosher the other part of it and the other part of it. And you can kind of roll it around, even if it's not in the boiling water at the same time. So that's where koshering is different than immersion in the mikveh, where you could do it in stages. Okay, has to be clean, not used for 24 hours, and then you got to do some form of extraction. Self-cleaning ovens, microwave, warming drawers. We covered all those, and then the classic form of koshering. It's super easy. It's super easy to kosher silverware. Again, you just take a pot that wasn't used in 24 hours, you fill it up with water, you boil it, and you throw the silverware in several seconds, and you take it out and rinse it in cold water, and you're good to go. What about the stovetop? So if you have a conventional gas range, we're gaining momentum here. I think we have everything under control, right, so far? So if you have a conventional gas range, so the iron or metal grates can be koshered very easily, actually. Number one, you should clean them. They should be clean. They shouldn't have, gook and stuff on them. We're talking about the grates now. And then what you do is you turn on the fire onto the highest setting. It's good to cover the burners or the grates with either a pot of water or a clean blech, because this way it'll help the heat. It'll help strengthen and intensify the heat. And you turn on the fire for 12 minutes. 12 minutes. 10 minutes should also probably be good, but 12 minutes just for abundance of caution. You turn it on for the highest setting for 12 minutes. Do 2 at a time. Let's say you have 4 or 6 burners. It might be a good idea to do 2 at a time, just because I was told that if you do all the burners at the same time, it could actually just ruin your oven. Maybe not, but in any case, that's just in terms of not a rule of koshering, but a rule in terms of your oven. You might want to do 2 of the burners at a time. You have 2 pots on 2 burners, highest temperature. Then you move the pots over with water, right? You move the pots over. Again, the pots are really just there to intensifies the heat on the grate, and you do it for another 12 minutes on the other burners. The burners themselves do not need to be kashered, right? Where the fire comes out of the burner, it does not need to be kashered. It just should be cleaned. The area between the burners, how about that? So here, that should be cleaned and covered with aluminum foil or some kind of top, some type of top on the area between, or you want to put a trivet, between the burners, so that if you put anything down, you put it on the trivet. Conventional electric stovetop, again, clean the burners. Here, turn it to the highest setting for 6 minutes to get it red hot. The drip pans should just need to be cleaned, and the area in the middle should be covered. If you could do boiling water without ruining it, do that, but just cover the middle area. If you have a glass or saran smooth top range, that's a little bit harder. Don't use for 24 hours. Make sure it's clean. Put on the burners on the highest temperature for 6 minutes to get it to a glow. And what about the rest of the area? Boiling water, if possible. If that's going to ruin it, So then, just place trivets on the area in the middle if you want to place a pot down there. And that'll be the way that you kosher your glass smooth top range. Broilers, it's more difficult to kosher. I would just clean the broiler pan in the area and do not use it. Do not use it for Pesach. How about sinks? Sinks. A woman called me a couple of years ago and said, can I kosher my stainless steel sink, or do I have to get a whole insert? I said, yes, you can kosher the stainless steel sink. I'll tell you how in a moment. She said, are you sure that's the way to kosher it? I don't need an insert. I said, yes, I'm sure. She said, are you sure? Really? I said, Leah, that's not her name. I said, Leah, you could use an insert. You want to be stringent, Shalom al Yisrael. But you can kosher your sink. It's very easy. If you have a stainless steel sink, you're blessed to have a stainless steel sink. What you do is you should not use the stainless steel sink for hot for 24 hours. Okay, so you wait till Wednesday or Thursday. You make sure you don't put any hot chametz items into the sink for 24 hours. You pour boiling water over the entire surface of the sink. And this is based on the principle we said earlier, right? Kabolo kach polto. Kabolo kach polto. All right, say that a few times. You're going to wake up in a cold sweat saying kabolo kach polto, kabolo kach polto. But kabolo means the way the taste is absorbed. That's the way to extract. So the way it's absorbed into the walls of the stainless steel sink is through water falling on it and the stuff falling on it. So if that's the way that it becomes not kosher, not chametzik, the way to kosher it and get it ready for Pesach is to just pour boiling water over the whole surface of the sink. So if it's like china or porcelain, then it cannot be koshered. And then you should have some kind of insert. You just don't put anything into the sink. You don't put any of the pots or silverware directly into the sink. So if it's china or porcelain, so then it's more difficult. Then you can't kosher, and then you should have an insert, or just don't put the stuff directly down into the sink. You could still use it to wash things, but don't put stuff down into it. But then the custom is to get some kind of insert. Countertops. So a lot of people feel better about covering the countertops. Okay, that's getting into the Pesach spirit. Others feel that covering the counters takes away from their celebration of the holiday. With certain counters, you could kosher them. Marble, granite, stainless steel, those areas can be koshered. The way to do that is, again, make sure that you don't have hot things directly on there for 24 hours. And this is really a stringency. This is a stringency because you don't have really hot food that's directly on the counter. It's usually with the medium of a pot, and this is a question whether the non-kosher or chametz tikka stuff gets absorbed into the counter altogether. Again, it's a stringency to cover it or kosher it, and the way to do so is best if you can to wait 24 hours, and then you use either boiling water to kosher the counter, to kosher the island. The other way to do it is to use a steamer. Use a strong steamer, and you go over the surface. So that's the way we've done it in our home for a couple of years. But with a strong steam, that's the other way to kosher the counter. Okay, porcelain, enamel, silestone, these types of things, then I think it's best for the counter to be covered. Again, it's if you're not putting the food directly onto it, and you're careful not to put hot pots directly onto the counter, so then you're not in violation of Pesach. Dishwashers, okay. So maybe I'm going out on a limb to say that maybe you can survive a week without a dishwasher, okay. But on the other hand, you can kosher a dishwasher. So Robin, this gets back in terms of if it's a porcelain interior, so then I would say not to kosher it. It can't be koshered. There may be a leniency for all year long to kosher porcelain, and you're welcome to talk to me. Rav Moshe Feinstein has a kula where if you wait a year and you kosher it 3 times, in an extenuating circumstance, you can even kosher china. He was asked that question where people were bali tshuva and they were making their kitchen kosher and they had all these different china dishes. So he felt that's an exception. If you wait a year, if you've already waited a year and it hasn't been used, and you kosher it either in boiling water or however the koshering process is 3 times, that could kosher even china. Generally speaking, we don't rely on that. But I've told people, let's say they're moving into a home or an apartment and they have a dishwasher that's porcelain, then don't use it for a year and run it through the cycle 3 times. But for Pesach, I would not rely on that. Generally speaking, we don't kosher china, as I've said already 3 times. But that's the exception that I alluded to earlier. And so with the dishwasher, if it's a stainless steel walls or it's plastic walls, so then it can be koshered. So what you do is don't use it for 24 hours. And what you should do is run it through 2 cycles. 1 cycle with soap, 1 cycle without soap, with nothing in it, nothing else in it. And you run it through the 2 cycles. So then you're fine. And the racks should be, make sure the racks are clean. I mean, the racks are in there when you run it through the cycles, but the racks should be clean. I mean, if you feel like there's stuff inside the racks that you just can't clean, so then you may need to get new or special Pesach racks for the dishwasher. But usually the racks are clean and the dishwasher is clean. Tablecloths and napkins, okay, just launder them. Okay, laundering of money is not permitted on Pesach all year round, but laundering of tablecloths and napkins, that is permitted. Just do that and you're good to go. High chair, clean thoroughly, cover the tray with contact paper. KitchenAid, blenders, mixers, things of that nature, that should be stored away with the chametz sticky utensils. It's just difficult to just clean the different small parts of that. Refrigerator. Okay, a refrigerator. You want to clean out the refrigerator thoroughly. And there's a custom to cover the shelves, cover the shelves with saran wrap or cover the shelves with some of that, with that, the plastic shelving. You don't need to move out the refrigerator or the wall unit or the dresser, as we said. Also, I think it's best to, to not leave chametz. You not leave chametz in your refrigerator or freezer. In other words, that you're selling. You're really best to not leave that in. If you could have a shelf in the fridge or the freezer of foods that are kind of, they're not chametz, but you're not going to use them on Pesach because you've opened the bag of the walnuts, or maybe you're in the middle of the bag, but it's not chametz, but it doesn't have kosher Pesach supervision. So as long as you just you cover it and then you conclude it in the sale. But I would say to not leave regular chametz in your refrigerator or freezer. Kiddush cups. The custom is to kosher them in boiling water because of the fact that they're washed with chametz utensils during the year. So, kosher them in boiling water. Technically, you don't use those with hot chametz, but because of the way they're washed, put that in boiling water. Silverware we've discussed. And I think we got through most of the different items. Okay, let's say a word about, we're getting close to koshering, so I think we're feeling much, much better, hopefully, about making your kitchen and home kosher for Pesach. I think we've covered most of the general rules when it comes to, what materials can be koshered, the three forms of koshering, right? What materials can be koshered, what are the different forms of koshering, and the different steps. And it's really not complicated. General rule is you wait the 24 hours, you clean it, and then you follow exactly what I told you. For a lot of it, it's just the boiling water for a few seconds, and you're good to go. Medicines and cosmetics, just to say a quick word about that. You have these big fat books that have all the different toiletries and cosmetics that are free of chametz. That's really all based on astringency. Meaning there are some who are stringent to try to not have any chametz, even in their toiletries, even in the medicines, even in the cosmetics. However, the general halacha is not in accordance with that. The general Jewish law is that you do not need to be stringent for that. Okay, and the position of the Orthodox Union is to not be stringent for that. Okay, so what I tell people is that that if something is inedible, so then it does not have the status of chametz. Okay, so if you have medicines. I mean, certainly if they're like it's a serious condition, then it's also the issue in terms of pekuach nefesh, perhaps. But even separate from pekuach nefesh, if you have something that's a non-chewable pill. All non-chewable pills are fine for Pesach. Okay, all non-chewable pills or vitamins are kosher for Pesach. Why? Because it's inedible. So it doesn't have the status of chametz. It's inedible even for a dog. It's nifsal achilas kelev, and so it doesn't have the status of chametz. And secondly, you're not ingesting it. You're not ingesting it in a regular way. You're swallowing it whole. So they're related. It's two different related reasons as to why it's fine. Creams are fine, all deodorants are fine, soaps are fine, shampoos. Okay, you want to check that there's no weed in the shampoo, but it's inedible. You're not eating it. It's inedible. It doesn't have the status of chametz. If you have a chewable pill that already has a taste, and so then you have to be, liquid medicines and chewables, then those are edible. And then you want to check in those books, or you want to ask a shaila to make sure that it doesn't have any chametz ingredients in it. Kitniot, the Ashkenazi custom, of course, is to not eat kitniot. Kitniot is corn, rice, soy, beans, similar kinds of products. However, there's no prohibition to have kitnios in your house. All right, so let's say you like Coca-Cola, and you have Coca-Cola from over the course of the year. So then that is considered kitniot, because that has a high fructose corn syrup. And so it's kitniot. So you don't drink that on Pesach, but you're allowed to own it. You're allowed to own it. You don't have to sell it with the rest of the chametz. You're allowed to own it. They make a special line, of course, of Coca-Cola for Pesach. What's the difference? So connoisseurs, Coca-Cola connoisseurs, they say that this is the best Coke all year long. Why? Because instead of corn syrup, they use cane sugar. And so that's the difference, and therefore it's not kitniot, and therefore you could drink it on Pesach. But even the regular soda, as I said, I'm just using that as an illustration, that there's no prohibition to have kitniot in your house. And also a person who is sick, even if there's no danger to life, a person who's sick or a child is permitted to have kitniot. Okay, but the common custom otherwise is to, of course, is to not have kitniot. Any questions? Any questions? Let's see. Let me take a look at the chat box here. Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi Topp. I have a question. This is Janice. When you talked about appliances, so I have a KitchenAid air fryer. It's all stainless.
Who is this? I'm sorry.
My name is Janice Brenman. Hello. Thank you.
Hi, Janice. Hi, Janice. How you doing?
Thank you. Thank God I'm good. I have an air fryer. It's KitchenAid. It's all stainless steel metal. And I was wondering if I can do the same thing like with the oven and put it at the highest temperature. What do you think?
So it's a fryer that
it's an air fryer. It's an air fryer.
Okay, so yeah, I don't know, how does that work?
So it has a temperature. It goes all the way up to 500. The one that I have, you kind of can use it like a mini oven.
Okay.
And it's all stainless steel metal. It doesn't have any plastic parts, except for the knob that you use to turn it on.
Okay, but it's smaller. It's much smaller than an oven.
Yes.
It's closer. It's more similar to a toaster oven and something like that. I would not kosher that. Because also the thing is, the stuff is put directly onto the walls, right? It's put directly in there.
Right, which is all metal.
Right, which is all metal. So that would need the higher form of libun, of fire. The leniency by a regular oven is because the food is not directly it's not placed directly onto the grill, or it's not directly placed onto the wall of the oven. But in your case of the air fryer, it's placed directly on, and so it would need a higher level of like the blowtorch to kosher it. So I wouldn't use it. Here, another question here is from, is it necessary to cover the table or table pads with plastic or towels before putting on the clean tablecloth? No, I think you just clean the table, and then you have the tablecloth on it. That is fine. You don't need to put a separate pad or a separate cover in between. A wooden dining room table. I've been covering it every year for Pesach. Okay, similar question. Was this unnecessary? Should I continue to cover it? It has cracks on it, which I vacuum it carefully to get the crumbs out. I think you should have some cover on it when you eat on it. So meaning to have some tablecloth. As long as you have you shouldn't, probably best not to eat directly. You shouldn't eat directly on that wood dining room table, and you should do what you've been doing each year, which is to cover it, as you've been doing, to cover it every year. Another question is, and you can cover it in any way you want. Can a chef knife with a plastic handle be koshered? Yes, because metal can be koshered, and as I said, I think you can be lenient in kosher plastic as well. As long as there's no like nooks and crannies where stuff can get caught, you can kosher the knife as well. Ashkenaz children can have kitnios. Yes, certainly. I would say, from the age of 6 and 7, then I think the minig, you should be stringent, unless they really need it for a special diet that they have. But if younger than that, then I think a 3 or 4 year old, I think that would be permitted. Certainly, if it's part of their diet and they need to have it, then it would be okay. But if it's best, if possible, if it's not necessary, to avoid kitnios, even for the younger children. Any questions? Yeah, Sherry.
Is there a website that you can check for products other than the OU, which, as Debbie said, means mostly East Coast brands and stuff, which is true.
Okay. Is there a website to check in terms of
things like that
for food right? Because dog food can't have chametz. You can't, because you can't benefit from chametz, and you can.
Brands do
Right. I think the only, the OU or the star K, or I'm not sure if Rabbi Beth publishes a book, and Rabbi Gershon Best from the other side of town. See, I think the OU might have things on dog foods. Okay, so let's wind it up. Thank you all so much for joining online, in person. Let's see what a couple other comments came through. Rabbi Eidlitz is a great resource. Okay, yes, Rabbi Eidlitz is a great resource. Rabbi Eidlitz is a kashrus expert, and he has a book that he publishes called Kashrus Conscience, and it has Lisa Rose's endorsement, and it has my endorsement as well. So Rabbi Eidlitz. I think we might have some here in the shul, but I actually have one in my office. A general thing to keep in mind is lafum tzara agra. According to the effort that you put in, is the reward. And so whatever hard work that you put into preparing for the holiday and preparing for the meals, and I know there's a lot that goes into it, even though I was trying to minimize it and trying to streamline it. But even, with everything that's said and done, there is a lot of effort that goes into it, but there's a tremendous amount of reward that you get. And the preparation that you put into the holiday, great to see you, Jess and Michelle. Thanks for turning your camera on. And anyone who's on, who wants to turn on their camera even for a moment to say hello and give us their smile, you're welcome to. Preparation, the preparation itself has religious value. And in a certain sense, it's the preparation that you put in, it's the effort that you put in that helps, give it, kind of an enduring quality to it. And so when we engage in the effort, you should keep that in mind, which is that you get reward for the effort. The preparation also has religious, spiritual value to it. And you should try as best as possible to be besimcha, to be happy, right? To be happy when you're putting in the effort in terms of preparing for Pesach. And we should also, okay, good to see you. Thanks for saying hello. Jill, good to see you. Susie, Beth, Shannon, Charlie, Lisa, Nechama, Steve, and any of the others whom I missed, and everyone here in person, to Alan, Catherine, Sherry, Robin, that the more you go above and beyond, the Talmud, I'll end with this, the Talmud says that the angels asked Hashem, why do the Kohanim ask Hashem to show special favor to the Jewish people, right? Yisa Hashem panav elecha, right? To show special favor to the Jewish people. Because it also says in the Torah that Asher lo yisa panim, that God does not show special favor to anyone. So God responds to the angels, according to the Talmud, that here the Jewish people go above and beyond in our observance of the law. So of course, I want to go above and beyond with the Jewish people. So we should keep that in mind, that, to the degree that we go above and beyond in our observance of Pesach, of course, it shows our love for Torah, our love of Hashem, and as a reward for us going above and beyond, cleaning the home, cleaning the kitchen, getting ready, the hosting that we're doing, all the efforts that we put into it, we should get tremendous reward for it, and Hashem should also bless us above and beyond with many, many brachot. All the best. Thank you. Thank you. I don't see you before Yom Tov. Chag Kosher v'Sameach.
You're muted.
Thank you, Rabbi Topp.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All the very best. Good luck with everything.
Thank you, Rabbi. Be well.